The Afrofuturist-centered perspective is intersectional and rejects binaries. For a long while now, futurist thinking and Afrofuturism haven't really addressed the plight of trans Black bodies, of queer people, and their tradition and our tradition. And it wasn't until recently that the National LGBTQ Task Force apologized to trans people for ignoring them. And we have, in the past several years, trans people who are being killed at an alarming rate, and they're Black trans people. And so we want to make it clear that Black trans lives matter, that Black queer people matter. I'm a product of multiple identities growing up in Los Angeles, and even in Los Angeles as Black and Jewish and queer. And, I had to navigate numerous types of identities. And I just remember this point in 1983 where I was in class with my English teacher at Fairfax High School in Los Angeles, and he begins the class proclaiming, "You are all homosexual." We looked at each other, kind of scared, initially shocked, wondering, how did he know that about us? His point, and it's not a new one, but queerness and most everything else is on a spectrum. We are all queer and partake in queerness and queer time. And I think it's an important point to understand how time can get out of its linear construction, that we can actually talk about what queer time might mean. See, the Black experience shapes our lives. Afro-queerness is part of our DNA. Part of that is really starting with the birth of our species, 150,000 years or so ago, where we didn't have terms like queer or homosexual or homophobia, and what life could have been like there, and to kind of imagine it. At the birth of our human species, we had queerness weaved within it. If we look to indigenous tribes, they have a space for gender fluidity, a third gender fluid pathways that they celebrate. People who are gender fluid in Native American tribes and in Aboriginal tribes are shamans, they're healers, they're future visionaries. This is really excellent statuette of the first people having sex that was ever discovered. They're just wrapped around each other and you can't tell what their gender is. And I think that really encapsulates Afro-queer and queer time. We can trace Afro-queerness in Egypt. There's also a tale of two manicurists for the pharaoh. And when they rediscovered their tomb, it shows them with their noses together and mouths almost nearly together. And that's a sure sign that they were a couple. Because usually it was of opposite sexes, but it shows them together, and they were revered, and it wasn't a problem. Or as the colonists arrived to the African continent and tried to make tribes shamed for their fluid gender pathways, and we're still struggling with it, right? There's this, a big sort of Eurocentric Christianity abounded in Africa that doesn't recognize LGBTQ rights. So I want to sort of come back to kind of pre-colonial times, this existence, and there's really great activists in Africa working in the African nations working on this too, to really bring queer futures and Black lives to the forefront and making that connection and keep making that connection. A great collaborator of mine, Nija Whitson at UC Riverside, she's working on this great essay called Super Fluid, Super Black. And they proclaim in this fantastic quote, "I am a Black, queer, trans, non-binary artist, flowing fluently like the memory of my superfluid slipping ancestors and transcestors. As my elder, Iya Fuyakari, often reminds me, if we are, then someone else in our line was. We are not the first." And so that's really important, because if you think about it, in what W.E.B. Du Bois talks about double consciousness, they have a heightened consciousness. They're able to see the fluid intersections of identities that they're living with on a daily basis to guide their tribe. And so I think, 150,000 years ago, this must be queer time. This is queer time. They didn't have the terms for it, but I feel like it's time to really acknowledge within the Black tradition that queerness has existed. There's this great documentary film artist, Leo Herrera, who completed this project called the Fathers Project, If They Lived. And he creates a series of 4 fictional film documentaries about what it would have happened if the leaders during the AIDS epidemic had lived. And he really imagines, creates a queer future world where the queer colonies have flourished. And he talks about the political influence of these queer colonies on the rest of the US, and that the queer colonies are becoming their own autonomous regions, which I love as well, too. And so through a series of 4 films, he leads us through these fantastic images that end, finally also evokes one of the leaders of ACT UP who's running for president in 2020. And so these types of things really inspire me to proclaim queer time continues with us. So I also aim to queer the categories of forecasting, future studies, and foresight as they are practiced. So it comes from a long tradition of African culture that really didn't see race and class in the same way that we do. It recognizes the interconnectedness of all things, Intu, which is Bantu for interconnectedness. It gives you a wider aperture on the future, where so many corporations and organizations and government agencies have tried to see the future through a straw. Seeing it through Black perspectives opens it up so you can see signals and Black signals and Afrofuture types happening on the streets in front of you.